What if I told you that Kris Jenner just declared war on Meghan Markle, and she didn't have to say a single word to do it? No press release, no shade-filled interview, no cryptic TikTok, just one quiet action. She deleted a single photo. But in Hollywood, where every image is calculated, deleting a photo isn't just a digital edit. It's a public execution. And when the matriarch of the Kardashian empire makes that move, the entire industry listens. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all began with what was supposed to be a celebration, Kris Jenner's 70th birthday. A night drenched in diamonds, drenched in nostalgia, and more importantly, drenched in cameras. Every flash, every angle, every moment was designed to be perfect. The guest list read like a who's who of power: Kim Kardashian, Khloe, Kourtney, Kendall, Kylie, Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bezos, Jennifer Lopez, even a rumored appearance by Elon Musk. Everyone wanted to be seen at that party. Everyone wanted to be part of Kris's world, because being seen with Kris Jenner is like being baptized into Hollywood royalty. And then there was Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Their arrival was unexpected, subtle, unannounced, but not unnoticed. You could almost feel the room tense up when the former royals walked in. Meghan, draped in a champagne-colored gown that shimmered under the chandelier lights, smiled like nothing could touch her. Harry, in a crisp black tux, followed closely, offering that polite half-smile he's perfected since moving to California. Somewhere between, "I'm thrilled to be here," and "I'd rather be invisible." But the truth was, this night wasn't about them. Not even close. The cameras caught it all, or so we thought. Dozens of photos from Kris's birthday bash flooded the internet. Every major tabloid ran stories about who wore what, who sat where, and who wasn't invited. Then came the famous birthday dump, Kris's carefully curated Instagram post. A carousel of glam shots, laughter, hugs, and star power. But fans noticed something strange. One photo that had circulated online earlier, the one featuring Meghan Markle and Prince Harry posing beside Kris and Kim, was gone, deleted, vanished without explanation. At first, people assumed it was a glitch. Maybe Kris's social media team had made a simple mistake. But this is Kris Jenner we're talking about. The woman who turned her family into a billion-dollar empire through flawless image management. There are no accidents in Kris Jenner's world. Every word, every color palette, every angle is strategy. And when fans compared the original post to the updated one, it became undeniable. Meghan and Harry's photo was deliberately removed. So what happened? Why would Kris Jenner, the ultimate PR chess master, erase Meghan Markle from her birthday narrative? Was it a silent snub, a calculated statement, or a warning to Hollywood about who's still in and who's already out? This wasn't just gossip. This was power politics, Kardashian style. Because in the age of digital optics, deletion is louder than words. When Kris Jenner deletes your photo, she's not just removing an image. She's rewriting the story. She's telling the world, "You don't fit in my frame anymore." Now, let's rewind a bit. Over the past few years, Meghan Markle has tried desperately to carve her space in Hollywood. She's gone from Duchess to documentary producer, from royal rebel to podcast host. Yet somehow, despite her influence, her connections, her carefully crafted California Duchess persona, things haven't gone her way. Her Netflix deal reportedly fell apart. Her Spotify partnership ended in silence. Her Hollywood friendships began to thin out. And Kris Jenner? She watched it all happen quietly. Because Kris understands something Meghan never quite mastered. In Hollywood, relationships are currency. And once that currency devalues, the calls stop coming. Invitations vanish. And one day, even your photo disappears. The internet went wild. Fans filled comment sections with theories. Why did Kris delete Meghan's photo? Was it an order from Kim? Did something happen at the party? The speculation was endless, but one thing was certain: this was intentional. And if Kris Jenner had something to hide, it was going to take more than an Instagram edit to bury it. Here's where things get even more intriguing. Sources close to the event claimed that the deletion didn't happen right away. In fact, the photo allegedly stayed up for nearly 12 hours before it vanished. In that short window, it had already gone viral. Hollywood blogs had published it, celebrity fan pages had reposted it, and people across the globe were asking one burning question: why was Meghan there in the first place? Because, truthfully, Kris Jenner and Meghan Markle's relationship has always been complicated. They move in similar circles, but operate on opposite frequencies. Kris builds empires through exposure. Meghan builds her image through mystery. Kris thrives on control. Meghan thrives on perception. Kris embraces chaos as marketing. Meghan runs from it, then accidentally creates more of it. So when these two worlds collided under one glittering roof, it was bound to explode. But not publicly. Not yet. Behind the scenes, there were whispers. Allegedly, Meghan had arrived late to the event, drawing attention as cameras swiveled toward her. Some say she interrupted a planned photo lineup. Others claim she made subtle comments about the Kardashians' image-obsessed culture. One attendee even described the atmosphere as icy elegance. Everyone smiled, but no one relaxed. The energy between Kris and Meghan wasn't hostility. It was something colder. Detachment. And Kris Jenner doesn't do detachment lightly. She does alliances or distance. Nothing in between. That's when the theory began to surface. The deletion wasn't about the photo. It was about the message. The Kardashians are meticulous about optics, and being associated with Meghan Markle at that moment might have felt risky. Especially after her recent PR stumbles, the failed projects, the alleged fallout with major media figures, the tension around the royal family. Kris, ever the strategist, might have simply decided, this isn't good for business. But others have another theory, that something specific happened that night. Something off camera. Something that pushed Kris over the edge. You can almost picture it. The music softens, the crowd shifts, and Kris, always aware of the smallest slight, catches Meghan whispering something near one of her daughters. Maybe it's about Kim's latest fashion deal. Maybe it's about Hulu's rumored documentary plans. Whatever it wasn't small talk. Kris notices. She smiles, nods, but something in her expression changes. Later that night, when her social media team starts sorting through photos for the birthday dump, she gives a quiet instruction, that one. Take it out. And just like that, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry vanish from Kris Jenner's world. Now, in any other situation, this might have gone unnoticed. But Kris Jenner's world is too public, too powerful, too closely watched. Within hours, fan accounts began piecing together timelines, comparing archived screenshots, and exposing the deletion. The hashtag started trending. The story caught fire. Some defended Kris. She's protecting her brand. Others defended Meghan. She doesn't deserve this kind of humiliation. But the truth, as always, is more complicated. Because the deletion was more than an insult. It was a mirror, reflecting how Hollywood truly works. 1 minute, you're in every photo. The next, you're erased. Not because of what you did, but because of what you represent. Kris Jenner represents control, legacy, dynasty. Meghan Markle represents disruption, independence, and unfiltered emotion. And those two forces cannot coexist peacefully for long. Let's be honest. Kris's 70th birthday wasn't just a party. It was a coronation. A symbol of survival, power, and influence. She's been through divorces, scandals, lawsuits, betrayals, and she's turned every one of them into profit. Meghan, meanwhile, is still trying to prove that she can control her own narrative. But when you walk into Kris Jenner's house, you play by Kris Jenner's rules. And here's where things get chilling. Some insiders claim Kris's decision wasn't just about the party or the photo. It was a move influenced by powerful people in her network. People connected to Hulu, to fashion, to entertainment giants who reportedly viewed Meghan and Harry as brand liabilities. Kris's deletion might have been her way of saying, I hear you. A subtle compliance wrapped in plausible deniability. Others go further, suggesting it was Kim Kardashian herself who made the call. After all, Kim's relationship with Meghan has reportedly been frosty ever since Meghan allegedly rejected a Schemes collaboration proposal. There's a rumor, and take this with a grain of Hollywood salt, that Meghan felt the brand didn't align with her values. That single comment, whether true or not, didn't sit well with the Kardashian business machine. Because when you snub the Kardashians, they don't confront you, they cut you off. And now here we are. A photo disappears, and the internet erupts. But beneath the drama lies something deeper. The story of two women who built their identities around control, but couldn't share the same frame. One commands the empire of exposure. The other hides behind curated authenticity. And when their images collided, only one could win. So why does this matter now? Because this isn't just about Kris and Meghan. It's about the silent, invisible wars that shape Hollywood's power structure. It's about how narratives are built, edited, and erased. It's about how the people who seem closest to each other on red carpets are often fighting cold wars behind the scenes. And in a digital age, the delete button is the sharpest weapon of all. For Meghan, the deletion was more than just an embarrassment. It was a warning that her Hollywood allies might not be as loyal as she believes, that even those who once welcomed her might be ready to move on. For Kris, it was a power move, a reminder that she doesn't need to shout to be heard. All she has to do is edit. But what really happened behind those golden curtains? What words were exchanged? What unseen tension unfolded that night that led to the quietest but loudest snub of the year? Because the night didn't end with the party. There was a conversation, a call, in fact, that set the stage for what came next. A call that would drag one of Kris's daughters into the center of it all. And that's where this story takes its first real turn. Because the truth behind that deleted photo, it didn't start with Kris, and it definitely didn't end there. Have you ever seen a single photo change the entire course of a friendship? Not a fight, not a scandal, not even a statement. Just one picture, posted, deleted, and suddenly the internet can't stop talking. That's exactly what happened after Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party, a night meant to celebrate legacy, power, and glamour, but that ended up exposing the cracks in Hollywood's glittering surface. Because when Kris Jenner deleted Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's photo from her birthday dump, it wasn't an accident. It was an earthquake disguised as a swipe. It all began with the kind of party only Kris could pull off. The lights of Los Angeles shimmered as black-tinted cars pulled up to a private Beverly Hills mansion transformed into what insiders called Old Hollywood Reborn. Picture this: chandeliers hanging over marble floors, crystal glasses clinking, and laughter bouncing off gold-trimmed walls. Guests weren't just attending a birthday. They were witnessing the crowning of a queen who had conquered fame itself. And then, somewhere between the toasts and the slow dances, something subtle began to unfold. Something that most people missed in the chaos of camera flashes. Kris Jenner was working the room like the maestro of a symphony. Every hug, every smile, every laugh was intentional. The cameras followed her as if drawn to gravity itself. But out of the corner of her eye, she saw something that made her pause, a familiar silhouette. Meghan Markle, followed closely by Prince Harry. You could practically hear the whispers spreading across the ballroom like perfume smoke. She came. Did Kris invite her? Why are they even here? Nobody had seen their names on the official guest list. Yet, there they were, gliding through the crowd as if they owned it. Meghan's smile was tight, rehearsed, and her body language gave away more than her words ever could. Harry looked lost, his eyes darting between guests, avoiding direct contact. For a moment, the air in that opulent room seemed to shift. It was subtle, but real. Hollywood royalty had collided with reality TV royalty, and not everyone was comfortable with it. Imagine being in that room, the smell of expensive perfume and champagne hanging thick in the air, as two different worlds brushed shoulders. On one side, the Kardashians, a dynasty built on exposure, ambition, and a ruthless understanding of fame. On the other, Meghan and Harry, a couple running from the same spotlight they can't seem to live without. It was a visual contradiction in motion. But the real drama didn't start until the flashbulbs began to pop. Cameras went off from every corner. Influencers, producers, and fashion moguls all wanted that one perfect shot. Somewhere in that chaos, Kris, Meghan, Harry, and Kim found themselves standing together for what would become the most talked-about image of the night. They smiled for the camera, glasses in hand, their bodies perfectly aligned. The photo, at first glance, looked harmless. But later, it would become the digital equivalent of a bomb. A few hours later, the image appeared online, first through an anonymous party guest's Instagram story. Within minutes, it spread like wildfire. The internet couldn't get enough. The unlikely pairing fascinated everyone. Comments exploded. Kris and Meghan, the crossover no one saw coming. This is the new Hollywood alliance. It was chaos, in the most viral way possible. But then came the twist. By the next morning, the same image that had been everywhere suddenly disappeared. Gone from feeds, gone from tagged posts, gone from Kris Jenner's own birthday dump. Fans who went back to screenshot the original post found it replaced by a tighter selection. Flawless pictures of Kim, Khloe, Kendall, and their glamorous guests. But no Meghan. No Harry. It was as if they had never been there at all. Now, anyone who knows Kris Jenner knows she doesn't do anything by accident. If a photo gets deleted, it's for a reason. Kris understands the digital battlefield better than anyone else alive. She's been shaping narratives since before social media existed. She knows that in Hollywood, silence speaks volumes, but deletion screams. So, naturally, fans began to dig. Why was the photo gone? Who made the call? And what really happened that night that made Kris Jenner, the master of perception, decide Meghan Markle didn't belong in her visual story? Some claim Kris deleted the photo after receiving a late-night call from Kim, who reportedly didn't like the optics. The Kardashians have always controlled their brand like a fortress, and aligning with someone as divisive as Meghan could have raised eyebrows. Others believe it was a directive from higher up, from network executives tied to Hulu, the platform that bankrolls the Kardashian empire. Apparently, someone in the PR machine thought Meghan's name carried controversy baggage that could harm the brand's image. But there's another theory, whispered quietly by insiders. Meghan herself may have triggered the delete. Yes, you heard that right. According to a few attendees, Meghan made an offhand comment during the party, something about how she admired the Kardashians' ability to monetize fame. It might sound like a compliment, but to Kris, it was an insult wrapped in silk. Kris Jenner doesn't monetize fame. She manufactures it, controls it, owns it. That comment, whether intentional or not, didn't sit right with the queen of control. Can you imagine being Kris Jenner in that moment? The woman who's built billion-dollar businesses from her family's image, hearing a duchess casually compare her legacy to a fame hustle. That's not something Kris forgets, especially not on her birthday. But this isn't where it ends, because the deletion wasn't immediate. It happened hours later, after a flurry of calls, messages, and PR check-ins. Some guests even claim they saw Kris reviewing photos with her team long after the last guests had left, sipping a glass of white wine, zooming in on faces, debating which shots would make the cut. It was meticulous, surgical, and when the Meghan and Harry photo came up, Kris reportedly said only 6 words. That one doesn't belong. Take it out. Now here's where it gets strange. Not everyone in the Kardashian circle agreed. Apparently, Khloe thought removing the photo would make things worse. People notice what's missing, she allegedly told Kris. But Kris was firm. The deletion wasn't a reaction, it was strategy. And in her world, strategy is everything. Still, Kris didn't account for one thing. The internet never forgets. Screenshots began to surface. Side-by-side comparisons. Fans noticed the missing frame instantly, and it became its own story. Within hours, hashtags like hashtag Kris deletes Meghan and hashtag birthday snub started trending. The press picked it up. Online tabloids ran headlines like Kris Jenner erases Meghan Markle from history and Hollywood freeze-out begins. Suddenly, a quiet birthday post had turned into a full-blown digital scandal. And the timing couldn't have been worse for Meghan. She was already facing mounting criticism over her canceled projects and alleged rifts with former friends. The deletion became symbolic, proof that even Hollywood's inner circle was losing patience with her. The internet didn't see it as a coincidence. They saw it as a verdict. But what about Harry? While Meghan's reaction was reportedly furious, she felt publicly humiliated. Harry, insiders say, was oddly quiet, detached, almost resigned. He's used to being cut out, one guest commented dryly. It's a chilling statement when you think about it. A man once born into the world's most photographed family, now invisible at the hands of America's most photographed family. There's a poetic cruelty to it. And yet, here's where things take another twist. The deletion might not have been the end of the story. It might have been the beginning of a bigger one. Because that night, according to someone close to the Kardashian-Jenner inner circle, Kris received another phone call. Not from Kim, not from her PR advisor, from someone else. Someone who allegedly warned her that keeping Meghan in that post could lead to brand confusion with an upcoming deal Kris was negotiating. A deal reportedly linked to a major streaming service, the same industry Meghan had just burned bridges with. It suddenly made sense. Kris wasn't just thinking about optics. She was thinking about business. That's Kris's golden rule. Loyalty is valuable, But business always comes first. If Meghan's name risked stirring controversy that could cost Kris millions, the choice was easy. Delete. But that decision had ripple effects. By removing Meghan and Harry, Kris unintentionally drew more attention to them than if she'd left the photo up. Fans began combing through every other image from the night, analyzing who Kris included and who she didn't. People noticed Kris kept photos with Oprah, Jeff Bezos, and several high-level media figures, all people Meghan once considered allies. The symbolism was clear. Those who could still open doors stayed in the frame. Those who couldn't vanished. And if you think this story ends there, think again. Because in Hollywood, deletion is never just deletion, it's communication. It's how power speaks when words are too messy. By cutting Meghan and Harry from her birthday narrative, Kris sent a clear message to the entire industry. They're not part of my story anymore. What's more fascinating is how quickly others followed her lead. Within days, Meghan and Harry's names were noticeably absent from several other social circles they'd once moved in. Invites dried up. Collaborations stalled. Even mutual acquaintances started distancing themselves. That's the kind of influence Kris Jenner wields. She doesn't just delete you from her photo, she deletes you from relevance. So, was it intentional malice? Or just cold strategy? Maybe both. Because Kris Jenner doesn't play favorites, she plays power. And in that game, Meghan Markle might have just lost a major ally. But here's the thing nobody's talking about. Before that photo vanished, another camera caught something else. Something that didn't make it online. A private, candid moment between Kris and Meghan that could completely change how we understand that night. Because while the world focused on what disappeared from Kris's feed, something else, something unedited, was happening right behind the scenes. And that moment, it didn't stay buried for long. What happens when a duchess tries to outshine the queen of reality TV? When two women who've both mastered the art of image, one through royal mystery, the other through calculated exposure, find themselves standing in the same spotlight. That was the unspoken tension simmering beneath every laugh, every toast, every camera flash at Kris Jenner's 70th birthday. Because while everyone else saw glitz and champagne, insiders saw something else entirely, a collision of worlds. A silent power struggle where reputation, status, and control were the unspoken currency. To understand why that deleted photo mattered so much, you have to understand who Kris Jenner really is, and why Meghan Markle was always destined to clash with her. Kris Jenner doesn't just manage a family. She manages an empire. Every move her daughters make, every scandal they endure, every tear shed on camera, it all flows through her. She is the architect of fame itself, the woman who turned controversy into currency, who built billion-dollar brands out of personal chaos. To many, she's not just a manager. She's the blueprint. Now, picture Meghan Markle walking into that world. A woman who left behind the British monarchy, hoping to reshape her own narrative in California, a place where fame feels freer, warmer, and supposedly less cruel. She wanted to own her story, to redefine her legacy. And for a while, it looked like she might succeed. The Netflix deal, the Spotify partnership, the interviews that sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace. She was supposed to be unstoppable, but in Hollywood, being visible isn't the same as being respected, and being talked about isn't the same as being trusted. By the time Kris turned 70, Meghan's golden glow had dimmed. Her projects weren't landing. Her allies were quiet. Even her image, the one she'd carefully polished since leaving the UK, was beginning to fracture under scrutiny. The Kardashians, meanwhile, were thriving. Their empire was stronger than ever. And so when Meghan entered Kris Jenner's celebration, she wasn't walking into a party. She was walking into an ecosystem, one she couldn't control. Guests who were there described the vibe as tense but polite. Meghan tried to blend in, but you can't blend in when half the room is watching to see if you do. Some claim she complimented Kris's decor, praising the elegance of the night in her usual, media-trained cadence. Others noticed she kept checking her reflection in her phone camera between conversations, adjusting her posture, smoothing invisible creases. For Kris, that was the first red flag. Not because of vanity, everyone at that party was vain, but because Meghan's energy wasn't genuine. She wasn't connecting. She was performing. And in Kris's world, that's the first sign of weakness. Because Kris knows something Meghan doesn't. Fame isn't about perfection. It's about control. It's about knowing when to show cracks, when to cry on camera, and when to disappear altogether. The Kardashians learned early that vulnerability, when packaged correctly, sells better than denial. Meghan, however, still clung to the idea of purity, of being misunderstood, not manipulative, of being a victim, not a player. But that narrative doesn't work in Hollywood. Not when you're standing next to Kris Jenner. And then came the moment that changed everything. As the night went on, Kris began moving through the crowd, stopping at each table to greet her guests. When she reached the section where Meghan and Harry were seated, something subtle happened. Meghan rose to greet her, smiling brightly, arms half open for what she probably thought would be a warm embrace. Kris returned the smile, but didn't step forward. Instead, she offered a polite nod, air-kissed the space between them, and turned to the person beside Meghan, engaging in conversation as if nothing had happened. It was effortless, elegant, devastating. Those who saw it said the air shifted. Meghan's smile faltered for just a split second. Harry noticed it too, his expression tightening into something caught between confusion and embarrassment. The moment passed quickly, smoothed over by laughter, but the message was clear. In Kris's world, warmth is a reward, not a given. Later that night, the photographers lined up to capture the group shots, the ones destined for the birthday dump. Meghan positioned herself naturally near Kris and Kim, assuming she belonged in the center. But Kris, in one of those blink-and-you-miss-it moments, gestured subtly for a reposition. "Let's get Kim in the middle," she said lightly. Meghan shifted. It was small, barely noticeable to most, but it wasn't lost on those who know how power moves in pictures. Placement is hierarchy. The center is dominance. The edge is exile. Still, the photo was taken. Smiles wide. Glasses raised. History, at least temporarily, captured. But beneath those smiles was tension. According to one insider, Meghan had spent part of the evening pitching a possible collaboration idea involving women empowerment and lifestyle branding, a concept she reportedly thought could align with the Kardashian brand. The idea? A potential joint philanthropic campaign blending Meghan's humanitarian image with the Kardashians' platform power. Kris listened, politely. But behind the scenes, she was skeptical. Kris doesn't mix philanthropy with PR unless there's measurable ROI. Meghan, meanwhile, was still speaking in idealistic tones, authenticity, healing, empowerment. But what Kris didn't expect was how quickly Meghan's defenders would rally. Hashtags supporting her started trending too. Hashtag justice for Meghan. Hashtag let her be. Hashtag mean girl move. Suddenly, Kris wasn't just the victim of gossip. She was the villain. And while Kris thrives on attention, there's one thing she doesn't tolerate: anyone questioning her authority. That's when she decided to strike back. Not with words, not with interviews, but with the same weapon that started it all, Instagram. 2 days later, Kris posted another carousel. Elegant black and white photos. Caption: still celebrating love, family, and the best night of my life. No tags, no names. But every image featured her inner circle: Kim, Khloe, Kourtney, her grandkids, and her closest allies. It was a message wrapped in glamour. This is my tribe. And the absence of Meghan was louder than ever. The internet ate it up. Kris doubling down, one fan commented. Queen behavior, wrote another. Within an hour, the post hit 2 million likes. Meanwhile, Meghan's last post on her own lifestyle account sat stagnant. Fewer comments, less engagement. Even her fan pages started noticing the drop in reach. Whether coincidence or consequence, the algorithm was no longer in her favor. It's as if the digital gods themselves had shifted allegiance back to the Kardashians. And here's the eerie part. Kris knows how to make that happen. She has partnerships with social media analysts, PR data firms, and influencer networks who quietly boost or suppress visibility across platforms. It's not illegal. It's just business. In her world, perception isn't organic. It's engineered. And if deleting one photo can tilt the digital scales, then Kris just proved she still runs Hollywood's invisible kingdom. So where did this leave Meghan? Stuck in a paradox. She wanted to be part of Hollywood's elite, but Hollywood doesn't embrace those who demand sympathy. It embraces those who manufacture fascination. Meghan's brand of authenticity, soft, controlled, politically correct, doesn't thrive in Kris Jenner's savage marketplace. And after that deletion, she learned a brutal lesson. In the land of curated perfection, even silence can make you look guilty. But here's where things take an even darker turn. That same night, a PR source leaked something unsettling to a media gossip site. They claimed Kris's deletion was triggered by a comment Meghan made about branding ethics. According to the leak, Meghan had quietly questioned the Kardashians' manipulative influence on women's self-image. If that's true, it's no wonder Kris struck back. That kind of shade isn't forgiven easily, not in Hollywood, and definitely not in the Kardashian matriarchy. By the next morning, whispers about Meghan's attitude problem started circulating again. Industry insiders talked about her being difficult, demanding, not a team player. And while nobody could prove Kris orchestrated those whispers, the timing was impeccable. Within 72 hours, Meghan had gone from a glamorous guest at Kris's 70th to a liability everyone wanted to avoid. One deletion, one rumor, total fallout. And yet, Kris didn't stop there. Days later, eagle-eyed fans noticed another strange detail. On one of Kim's Instagram stories, a familiar face appeared in the background, Oprah. But just barely. Meghan, who had reportedly spoken with Oprah earlier that week, wasn't mentioned once. It's almost as if Kris had made sure every connection Meghan once relied on was reminded where loyalty truly belonged. The digital dominoes kept falling. Meghan's engagement plummeted. Tabloids recycled old headlines. Paparazzi photos suddenly became unflattering again. And Kris? She posted a serene photo of herself sipping wine, captioned simply, "Peace and power." It wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. Because that's what Kris Jenner does. She choreographs chaos until it dances in her favor. But here's the real twist. The deletion wasn't even the endgame. It was the opening act. Because one photo Kris didn't delete that night might hold the real story. The photo that stayed, buried deep in that carousel, unnoticed by most, captured something shocking. Something that would explain everything about Kris's decision and reveal the secret Meghan thought nobody saw. And that photo? It's the one everyone missed. Until it resurfaced weeks later in a leaked folder no one was supposed to find. What was in that unposted shot? And why did Kris's PR team scramble the moment it leaked? That's where things get complicated, and where our story takes its sharpest turn yet. What if the real story wasn't in the photo Kris Jenner deleted, but in the one she didn't post? What if the truth about what really happened that night, the tension, the betrayal, the whisper that changed everything, was frozen in an image hidden deep inside Kris's phone, never meant for public eyes? Because when that unposted photo finally surfaced weeks later, everything made sense. The deletion wasn't random. It was preemptive, a move made by a woman who saw something coming, something she didn't want the world to see. But to understand that, we have to go back to the exact moment that photo was taken, a single frame that captured the unfiltered truth behind the smiles. Picture it, Kris Jenner's 70th birthday. The night's energy is electric, thick with champagne bubbles and ambition. The music hums low in the background, Frank Sinatra's "Fly Me to the Moon," because Kris has a flair for nostalgia. Laughter echoes across the hall, and everyone is pretending to be effortless. But under the glitter, people are calculating, watching, measuring. Hollywood's finest mingling with royalty that no longer belongs to a crown. Meghan and Harry stand near the edge of the room. Meghan's dress, a silk gold beige number that catches every flicker of light, makes her glow, but not in the way she hopes. People are staring, yes, but not the way she's used to. There's curiosity, even discomfort. Meghan senses it. Her posture stiffens. She laughs at a joke no one told. Harry adjusts his cufflinks. Neither of them notices Kris's photographer making his way around the room, snapping photos of every major guest. The photographer, a man named Derek, who's worked with the family for years, has a knack for capturing both glamour and awkwardness. That night, he captures plenty of both. And then it happens. Derek lifts his camera, angles it toward Kris and Meghan, who've just found themselves standing side by side at the bar. The timing is perfect, or maybe disastrous. Meghan leans slightly closer, smiling. Kris, glass of white wine in hand, turns her head, mid-conversation with someone else, unaware of the camera. The shutter clicks. Flash. 1 second later, Kris turns and catches Meghan staring at her, lips parted as if she was about to speak. Their expressions collide in one frame. Meghan's earnest, Kris's wary. The smiles don't match. It's the photo no one was supposed to see. Later that night, when Kris's social media team reviewed the hundreds of images from the party, this one stood out immediately, but not for the right reasons. Meghan's expression was off. Kris looked distracted, almost unimpressed. In a sea of perfect pictures, this one felt raw. Real. And that, for Kris, was the problem. According to one insider, Kris took one look at that shot and said quietly, "Don't post that." Her assistant hesitated. "But it's powerful," she replied. "It's real." Kris shook her head. "Exactly. And that's why it'll start rumors." But what Kris didn't know then, or maybe she did, was that the photo would surface anyway. Not through her, not through Meghan, but through someone who had everything to gain by leaking it. 3 weeks later, that image appeared on a gossip forum. Not a tabloid, not an official outlet, just an anonymous account called LA Fame Files. The post caption read, "The look that ended it all. Kris knew before anyone else." Within an hour, it was everywhere. The comments were ruthless. "Kris looks disgusted. Meghan's desperate for approval. That's not friendship, that's friction." It was the kind of photo you couldn't stop staring at, not because it was dramatic, but because it was subtle. You could feel the tension even in stillness. Meghan's smile looked rehearsed. Kris's body language screamed boundaries. The unposted photo revealed what words hadn't. These two women weren't allies. They were adversaries in disguise. But here's where it gets stranger. According to two separate guests who spoke later, that photo wasn't just a moment. It was a prelude to a confrontation. Apparently, just after that shot was taken, Meghan had tried to strike up a deeper conversation with Kris. Something about brand alignment, philanthropy, and, allegedly, redefining the way women of power present themselves. To Meghan, it was an opportunity to connect. To Kris, it was an interruption. Especially because Meghan's phrasing, according to one witness, came off as condescending. She told Kris she admired her for transforming herself after scandal, one attendee said. She meant it as praise, but it sounded like a dig. You could see Kris's face change immediately. Kris, always poised, raised an eyebrow. "Sweetheart," she reportedly replied, "I didn't transform. I built." It was the kind of line that could slice glass. Meghan froze, realizing too late that her compliment had landed like an insult. The nearby guests shifted awkwardly. Even Harry, sensing tension, cleared his throat and mumbled something about needing another drink. That's when Kris took her glass, smiled politely, and turned away. No raised voice. No scene. Just distance. But in that distance, a boundary had been drawn, and Meghan, unknowingly, had crossed it. Now, fast forward to the leak. Once that photo hit the internet, it didn't just revive the story, it reframed it. Suddenly, Kris wasn't just someone who deleted a photo. She was a woman who knew how to erase a problem before it erupted. Fans called her the PR prophet. Memes flooded social media comparing Kris to a chess master. She saw 3 moves ahead. And as the internet dissected the image, something else came to light. The reflection in the background. Because if you zoomed in just enough, you could see something extraordinary. In the mirror behind Kris and Meghan, another figure was visible, Kim Kardashian. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't posing. She was watching them. Her eyes locked on the two women, her face unreadable. The moment fans noticed it, the theories exploded. Did Kim overhear the conversation? Did she alert Kris afterward? Was this all part of a bigger Kardashian media strategy to isolate Meghan? Whatever the truth, that reflection told a story of its own, a quiet witness to a power shift happening in real time. Kris might have been the queen, but Kim was always the executor. And if Kim had her reasons for wanting Meghan gone, Kris would never question them. In the following days, Hollywood insiders began whispering that the leak of that unposted photo wasn't random, that it came from someone within Kris's orbit, maybe even someone from her team, not out of malice, but as part of a larger narrative reset. Because by leaking that single photo, Kris didn't just justify the deletion, she controlled the aftermath. She made it look like foresight, not feud. Strategy, not shade. But for Meghan, the damage was irreversible. Once again, she was the outsider, the woman whose smiles were dissected, whose motives were questioned, whose image was rewritten by others before she could defend herself. And this time, it wasn't the royal family orchestrating it. It was Hollywood royalty. Still, one question lingered. Who actually leaked the photo? Some pointed fingers at a former Kardashian employee, recently let go after years of service. Others believed it came from one of the guests who'd grown tired of Meghan's attempts to dominate conversations that night. But there was another theory, darker, more personal, that the leak came from someone inside Meghan's own circle. Someone who wanted to expose the growing tension between her and Kris before Meghan could spin it herself. Whoever did it, it worked. Because now, Kris had what she needed. Proof that she was right to distance herself. Proof that she'd made the right call when she hit delete. But as the story spiraled, another layer of intrigue surfaced, the reaction inside the Jenner household. Kylie, who's built her entire career on maintaining neutrality in her mother's feuds, reportedly told a friend, "Mom's deleting photos now? That's when you know it's serious." Even Khloe, known for defending her family's every move, stayed unusually quiet online. There was something about this situation that felt bigger, riskier. Like the line between Hollywood politics and personal vengeance had blurred. And if you think Kris was done playing the game, think again. Because right after the unposted photo leak hit the web, Kris made a subtle move. She followed, and then unfollowed a handful of Meghan's former acquaintances on Instagram, including a stylist who had once worked on the Duchess's Archetypes podcast shoot. Fans noticed. Screenshots flew. Headlines popped up. Kris sends digital message. Meghan out of Hollywood circle? It was almost too perfect, too timed. But behind all the speculation and PR maneuvering, something deeper was happening. A quiet humiliation for Meghan. Every headline, every tweet, every meme chipped away at her credibility. Once, she'd been the narrative. Now, she was the cautionary tale. And Kris had done it without ever saying a single word publicly. Still, Meghan wasn't ready to give up. She began calling a few select allies. One of them a certain A-list talk show host who had once defended her on national television. Meghan wanted to clarify misconceptions, to explain that she and Kris were fine. But that call never happened. Because before she could reach out, she got word from someone close to Oprah's circle that Kris had already spoken to her. The message was simple: "We're fine. Just don't get involved." That was it. The door shut. And the unposted photo, the one Kris had tried to bury, had become the most talked about image of the year. It didn't just capture tension, it captured hierarchy. It showed who belonged and who didn't, who was framed and who was framed out. But as the online storm began to settle, Kris wasn't relaxing. Not yet, because she'd received another call. One that made her face tighten just slightly. A call from someone who said they knew who leaked the photo. Someone who had been at that party. Someone who claimed Meghan wasn't the only one whispering that night. And that person? They weren't calling to gossip. They were calling with a warning. In Hollywood, gossip travels faster than light. Before a scandal makes headlines, before a PR statement hits the inbox, it's already making the rounds at lunch tables, charity galas, and Pilates studios. And when the whispers started circling about Kris Jenner's 70th birthday, about Meghan Markle's deleted photo, the awkward tension, and that mysterious unposted image, the city's most powerful mouths began to move. Quietly, strategically, because in Beverly Hills, silence isn't safety. It's suspicion. The first whisper came from a woman named Carla, a publicist who's been working in the business long enough to know that the smallest rumor can ruin a career before it's even confirmed. Carla wasn't at the party, but one of her clients was a mid-tier actress who texted her around midnight. "Something weird just happened," the message read. "Kris and Meghan, total frost." Carla didn't ask for details. She didn't need them. The words Kris and frost in the same sentence were enough to set her instincts off. By dawn, the whisper had started to spread. At brunch spots like the Ivy and Soho House, agents leaned in close to each other over avocado toast and espresso martinis, lowering their voices just enough to make sure they'd be overheard. "You heard about the birthday thing?" one would say. "Oh, with Meghan?" "Yeah." She overplayed her hand. Each repetition added a new twist, an embellished comment here, an invented gesture there. By the time the story reached the tabloids, it was unrecognizable. Meghan wasn't just awkward anymore. She was allegedly condescending. She wasn't just uninvited from Kris's next event. She was banned. And that's how it always starts. Not with proof, but with precision. The Beverly Hills Whisper Network doesn't deal in truth. It deals in rhythm. Each person passes the beat along, adding just enough melody to keep it believable. But make no mistake, someone always orchestrates it. And this time, the conductor wasn't a tabloid editor or a gossip blogger. It was someone much closer to the Kardashians. Someone who had everything to gain by letting Meghan's image implode quietly. Kim Kardashian. According to multiple insiders, Kim had been uneasy about Meghan's presence from the start. She built her brand on partnership with billion-dollar corporations, Balenciaga, Schemes, Dolce & Gabbana. Meghan's reputation for unpredictability made her nervous. Kim doesn't like wild cards, one insider said. She likes people she can manage. And Meghan? Meghan was unmanageable. That night, when she saw Meghan trying to pitch an idea to Kris about women redefining power, Kim reportedly rolled her eyes. She's trying too hard, she whispered to a friend. We already redefined it. So when the unposted photo leaked weeks later, Kim didn't need to start the fire. She just needed to fan it. And fan it she did. She didn't tweet or comment. She didn't have to. All she did was like a few cryptic posts. One was from a fan account praising Kris's unbothered elegance. Another from a Kardashian stan page that read, Lesson of the day, don't mess with the matriarch. Simple gestures, subtle fuel. But in the world of celebrity optics, a single like from Kim Kardashian can be the difference between speculation and confirmation. Meanwhile, Meghan's inner circle was panicking. Her PR advisors warned her not to respond publicly. It'll make you look defensive, they said. But privately, Meghan was furious. She believed someone close to Kris had intentionally leaked that image to humiliate her. This was planned, she reportedly told a friend. Kris doesn't make mistakes. She makes moves. She wasn't wrong. Because as the whispers grew louder, Kris's team quietly stepped in behind the scenes. They started calling media outlets, not to deny anything, but to guide the narrative. We don't comment on speculation, they said. But Kris wishes Meghan nothing but the best. That single phrase, nothing but the best, is Hollywood code. It sounds warm, but lands cold. It's what publicists say when they're done with you, but don't want to look petty. It's final, disguised as polite. The next day, a source close to the Kardashian family spoke to Page 6. There's no bad blood, they said. It was just a matter of keeping the post consistent. The word consistent did heavy lifting there. Because consistency in Kris Jenner's language means brand alignment. And Meghan, in that moment, was not aligned. Still, not everyone was convinced this was just a strategic decision. Some of Kris's oldest friends started whispering that there was more to the story. Something personal. Something that happened after the photo was deleted. It was just after midnight when Kris Jenner's phone rang. The guests had gone home. The mansion was quiet, and only the faint hum of cleaning staff and the distant clinking of empty glasses filled the silence. Kris sat alone in her kitchen, still in her black sequined gown, a half-finished glass of wine at her elbow. Her phone buzzed once, then again. The caller ID flashed across the screen, Kim. She hesitated. Kim never called this late unless it was serious. Kris put the glass down, tapped accept, and leaned back. Hey, sweetheart, she said, her voice steady warm. There was a pause on the other end, just breathing. Then Kim's voice came through, low and deliberate. Mom, you need to take that photo down. Those 9 words changed everything. Kris didn't answer right away. She looked at her reflection in the window. Tired, perfect, unreadable. Why? She asked. It's just a picture. Kim sighed. It's not just a picture. It's a problem. Now, for Kim Kardashian to say something is a problem means it's already reached the boiling point. She doesn't deal in emotion. She deals in optics. And in her world, Meghan Markle's presence in Kris Jenner's birthday dump wasn't just a guest appearance. It was bad business. People are already talking, Kim continued. I've had 3 calls since midnight. Someone from Hulu, someone from Balenciaga, and someone from Vogue. They're all asking why she's in the post. Kris's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes sharpened. So, she asked lightly, what do they care? Kim's voice hardened. Because she's radioactive, Mom. Everything she touches turns into controversy. You know that. And right now, we don't need that kind of attention. Kris stayed silent, swirling her wine. She understood exactly what Kim meant. The Kardashian empire wasn't just a family. It was a multinational brand. Every partnership, every post, every image was a chess move. And one wrong photo could disrupt millions in sponsorships. Kris knew that better than anyone. But still, she wanted to hear Kim say it plainly. Tell me, she said quietly, What's the real issue? Kim didn't hesitate. She made comments tonight about me, about us. That got Kris's attention. She told people, Kim continued, that she doesn't understand how we can call ourselves empowering women while selling shapewear and selfies. Someone overheard her say it. And guess what? It got back to me. Kris set her wine down. Are you sure she said that? Kim's laugh was sharp, humorless. Mom, it's Hollywood. It doesn't matter if she said it or not. People believe she did. And that's enough. There it was, the line that rules Los Angeles. Truth is optional. Perception is everything. Kris stood and walked to the counter, pressing her palms against the cool marble. I'll handle it, she said finally. I already did, Kim replied. I called you first because I wanted to make sure you were okay with it. But the photo's coming down tonight. I've already texted your social team. For a moment, the only sound was the refrigerator humming in the background. Kris didn't argue. She didn't even sigh. She just said, okay, and ended the call. But when she set the phone down, her hands trembled, not from fear, but from calculation. Because Kris Jenner doesn't panic. She plans. And in that quiet kitchen, long after the laughter and lights had faded, Kris began to think not about what she'd lost, but what she could gain from this moment. Meanwhile, just a few miles away in Hidden Hills, Kim was pacing her massive living room, still in her party dress. The heels were off, the earrings discarded. Her phone was blowing up, texts from her assistant, messages from her PR team, even one from an unnamed brand executive who'd attended the same party. You did the right thing, one text read. Smart call removing the photo, said another. But the last one stopped her cold. Make sure Meghan doesn't find out who told you. Because here's the twist. Kim hadn't overheard Meghan directly. She hadn't even seen her speak. The information came from someone else. A friend who'd been sitting at the bar that night, close enough to catch the tail end of Meghan's conversation with Kris. According to that friend, Meghan had said something that sounded harmless, but in the wrong ears, it was dynamite. She said she admires how your family capitalizes on emotion, the friend told Kim. It came off like she was mocking you. And that was enough. Kim didn't need context. She didn't even need certainty. She just needed an opportunity, and Meghan handed her one on a silver platter. By dawn, the photo was gone. The caption stayed the same. The carousel looked seamless, and only those paying close attention noticed the missing frame. But in Hollywood, people always pay attention. And by mid-morning, the whispers were already making their way across social feeds. Did you see Kris's post? The Duchess got deleted. Kim strikes again. Kris's social team worked quickly, pretending nothing had changed. They updated hashtags, boosted engagement, and ensured that the focus stayed on the Kardashian-Jenner family. But Kim wasn't done. She knew Meghan's PR team would notice the deletion, and she wanted them to. Because this wasn't just about protecting the family's image anymore. It was about sending a message. No one uses the Kardashians for clout. Not a duchess, not a prince, not anyone. Later that afternoon, Kim met with her manager, Tracy. They sat in her office surrounded by glowing screens showing engagement charts, brand forecasts, and trending analytics. People are running with the story, Tracy said, scrolling through social media. You're being praised for protecting the brand. You want me to push a statement? Kim shook her head. No, silence works better. Tracy smiled knowingly. Of course it does. Silence creates hunger. And she was right. By keeping quiet, Kim made sure the narrative belonged entirely to speculation, the most powerful fuel in Hollywood. People started debating whether Meghan had disrespected the Kardashians or whether Kris had simply cleaned up her feed. Either way, the sisters looked untouchable, and Meghan looked desperate. But back at Kris's house, the mood was different. Kris wasn't celebrating. She was uneasy, not because she regretted deleting the photo, but because she knew something Kim didn't. That comment Meghan allegedly made, it didn't happen the way Kim's friend said it did. In truth, Meghan's words had been taken out of context. What she'd actually said, according to another guest, was this: it's amazing how the Kardashians have turned emotion into empowerment. It's fascinating. The tone was admiration, not mockery. But in the echo chamber of Hollywood gossip, tone doesn't survive retelling. By the time it reached Kim, the compliment had mutated into an insult. And Kris, ever the strategist, now had a choice: correct her daughter or capitalize on the chaos. You can probably guess which one she chose. She poured herself another glass of wine. sat on her couch, and started drafting a text. Not to Meghan, not to Kim, but to her PR head. "Let the internet run with it," she typed. "We don't respond." Then she added a second message. "And pull the backup files from Derek's camera. I want every shot of Meghan reviewed." That second text would prove to be the spark that lit the next fire. The next morning, Meghan woke up to find her name trending again, but not for the reasons she wanted. Gossip blogs were running headlines like "Kris Jenner deletes Meghan Markle from her birthday dump" and "Kardashians cut the Duchess out of Hollywood." Every outlet had a different spin, but they all carried the same undertone. Meghan was out. She called her assistant immediately. "Find out who started this," she snapped, "and get me on the phone with Kris." But Kris wasn't answering. Her team claimed she was booked solid for meetings all day. Meghan tried Kim next. No response. Even Khloe, who was usually more approachable, left her message on read. It was as if the entire Kardashian family had gone dark. By that evening, Meghan's own publicist advised her to stay silent. "You can't fight whispers," he told her. "You'll look petty. Let it blow over." But Meghan couldn't let it go. She was convinced someone had set her up, and she was right. What she didn't know was that Kim's call to Kris hadn't been just a reaction. It was a strategy session disguised as concern. Because Kim wasn't only protecting the Kardashian image, she was testing the power dynamic. She wanted to see how far Kris would go for the brand, even if it meant turning on a potential ally. And Kris's compliance told her everything she needed to know. That's why, a week later, Kim took things one step further. She reached out to a major celebrity podcast host, an off-the-record conversation about brand safety and public perception. She never mentioned Meghan's name directly, but she didn't have to. The host connected the dots himself, and within 48 hours, the same podcast aired an episode titled "The Duchess Problem: When Image Becomes a Liability." It went viral. Kim had done what she always does best, shifted blame without taking any. Meanwhile, Meghan's team scrambled to figure out how the story kept evolving. They traced the narrative's first spark, a single anonymous quote, back to someone suspiciously close to the Kardashian PR team. But by the time they were ready to go public, the damage was done. And Kris? She stayed quiet, smiling through her next round of interviews, radiating calm. "I'm just grateful," she told a reporter on the red carpet. 70 is the new 40. No mention of Meghan. No hint of scandal. Just the image of control. But behind that calm, Kris was still haunted by one thought. The photo was gone, the controversy contained, yet something still felt off. Kim had been too quick, too rehearsed. It wasn't just about brand protection. There was something else at play. Because the night of that call, the same night Kim told Kris to delete the photo, Kim herself received a message. An anonymous text. Short, cryptic, sent from a blocked number. It said, She said worse than that. Check the bar footage. And that footage? It didn't stay hidden for long. But that decision had ripple effects. By removing Meghan and Harry, Kris unintentionally drew more attention to them than if she'd left the photo up. Fans began combing through every other image from the night, analyzing who Kris included and who she didn't. People noticed Kris kept photos with Oprah, Jeff Bezos, and several high-level media figures, all people Meghan once considered allies. The symbolism was clear. Those who could still open doors stayed in the frame. Those who couldn't vanished. And if you think this story ends there, think again. Because in Hollywood, deletion is never just deletion, it's communication. It's how power speaks when words are too messy. By cutting Meghan and Harry from her birthday narrative, Kris sent a clear message to the entire industry. They're not part of my story anymore. What's more fascinating is how quickly others followed her lead. Within days, Meghan and Harry's names were noticeably absent from several other social circles they'd once moved in. Invites dried up. Collaborations stalled. Even mutual acquaintances started distancing themselves. That's the kind of influence Kris Jenner wields. She doesn't just delete you from her photo, she deletes you from relevance. So, was it intentional malice? Or just cold strategy? Maybe both. Because Kris Jenner doesn't play favorites, she plays power. And in that game, Meghan Markle might have just lost a major ally. But here's the thing nobody's talking about. Before that photo vanished, another camera caught something else. Something that didn't make it online. A private, candid moment between Kris and Meghan that could completely change how we understand that night. Because while the world focused on what disappeared from Kris's feed, something else, something unedited, was happening right behind the scenes. And that moment, it didn't stay buried for long. What happens when a duchess tries to outshine the queen of reality TV? When two women who've both mastered the art of image, one through royal mystery, the other through calculated exposure, find themselves standing in the same spotlight. That was the unspoken tension simmering beneath every laugh, every toast, every camera flash at Kris Jenner's 70th birthday. Because while everyone else saw glitz and champagne, insiders saw something else entirely, a collision of worlds. A silent power struggle where reputation, status, and control were the unspoken currency. To understand why that deleted photo mattered so much, you have to understand who Kris Jenner really is, and why Meghan Markle was always destined to clash with her. Kris Jenner doesn't just manage a family. She manages an empire. Every move her daughters make, every scandal they endure, every tear shed on camera, it all flows through her. She is the architect of fame itself. The woman who turned controversy into currency, who built billion-dollar brands out of personal chaos. To many, she's not just a manager. She's the blueprint. Now, picture Meghan Markle walking into that world. A woman who left behind the British monarchy, hoping to reshape her own narrative in California, a place where fame feels freer, warmer, and supposedly less cruel. She wanted to own her story, to redefine her legacy. And for a while, it looked like she might succeed. The Netflix deal, the Spotify partnership, the interviews that sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace. She was supposed to be unstoppable, but in Hollywood, being visible isn't the same as being respected, and being talked about isn't the same as being trusted. By the time Kris turned 70, Meghan's golden glow had dimmed. Her projects weren't landing. Her allies were quiet. Even her image, the one she'd carefully polished since leaving the UK, was beginning to fracture under scrutiny. The Kardashians, meanwhile, were thriving. Their empire was stronger than ever. And so when Meghan entered Kris Jenner's celebration, she wasn't walking into a party. She was walking into an ecosystem, one she couldn't control. Guests who were there described the vibe as tense but polite. Meghan tried to blend in, but you can't blend in when half the room is watching to see if you do. Some claim she complimented Kris's decor, praising the elegance of the night in her usual, media-trained cadence. Others noticed she kept checking her reflection in her phone camera between conversations, adjusting her posture, smoothing invisible creases. For Kris, that was the first red flag. Not because of vanity, everyone at that party was vain, but because Meghan's energy wasn't genuine. She wasn't connecting. She was performing. And in Kris's world, that's the first sign of weakness. Because Kris knows something Meghan doesn't. Fame isn't about perfection.